There is a story about a man who has been in a deserted island for decades. A Navy ship discovered signs of life in that desert and decided to send a smaller ship to rescue the man. In getting there, they discovered that the man had built 3 huts, and they decided to ask him questions. The leader of the rescue team asked him, "What do you need 3 huts to do?" He said, "This one is where I live. I've given up people finding me. So I decided to build a place so that I can shade myself." They said, "That is good." They said, "What of this one?" He said, "This is where I go to church. I needed a separate place that I can worship my God apart from where I live." They said, "That is good." They said, "What of this one?" He said, "That is where I used to go to church." Church problem is everywhere. Sometimes we find it difficult to get along with one another. And in the case of this man, sometimes we find it difficult to get along with ourselves. So today we want to look at the topic, when things at church are really bad. I'm going to say this once in the onset of this sermon, and hopefully you will remember that as we go throughout this lesson. This sermon is not intended to indicate that I believe that things in Ikeja Church are really bad. But just as in marriage, the best time to deal with problems is when it has not gotten bad. And that is not to say that everything is perfect here. We have our own issues and problems. So there are some lessons and principles that we can apply even though we might not be in those terrible circumstances that we view the church at current. And the first thing I want us to understand this morning is that churches have problems. I hope that is not a new revelation to you. As long as there are people in the church or in churches, there are going to be problems. 2 years ago, we spent months going through the book of 1 Corinthians. And from chapter 1 through to 16, every page you open, you are introduced to a problem. Every page you open, you are introduced to a new problem. We have the problem of division and quarrel over leaders. Some are aligning themselves with different prominent Christian figures. Some say I belong to Apollos, some say I belong to Paul, some say I belong to Peter. We have the problem of rejection of Paul's simple gospel for worldly wisdom. They base their wisdom on they base their spiritual truth on standards of human standards. So we have the problem of immaturity because of jealousy and strife. They have the problem of arrogance and misjudgment of the apostles. Then in chapter 5, which is one of our texts, they have the problem of sexual immorality and lack of church discipline. There is a fornicator in their midst. That is problem enough. But compounding the problem, the church was not doing anything about it. And as strange as that my simple said, they are puffed up. They are proud of this particular sin. In chapter 6, which is also part of our text, There were lawsuits among believers. Here have lawsuits, there is plural. That means they were serving it. They tell you, here, this is your paper, let's meet in court. And the next day, you will now come together to worship. Then they have issue concerning marriage, singleness, and divorce. In chapter 8, they have the issue of eating food sacrificed to idol. Then 9, post-apostolic rites and sacrificing for the gospel. Chapter 10, warning against idolatry and further instruction and idol feast. Chapter 11, 12, 13, 14. There were a lot of abuses in their worship. And we can go on and on and on. So the church at Corinth is a problem church. But don't think that the first century church in Corinth was the only church that had problems. Almost every church in that we read about in the Bible, they had problems. Church in Galatia, their problem is false doctrine. We have the church at Philippi. They were encouraged to get along with one another. We have the 7 churches of Asia. You do the math. 5 out of the 7 had serious problems that were dealt with in the letters Paul wrote to them. We have the church at Thessalonica. 2 letters were written to them to get along. Many of them, and we are going to have it now. Let's think about the categories and types of problems that churches experience today. That if we are not careful, that we are not immune to it. Number 1 is our differences. If you can go around this hall, you will find a lot of things different about us. And if we are not careful and we allow worldliness and selfishness to set in, we will find ourselves in the same situation these people were. Then sometimes we have poor leadership. We have people that are just ineffective leaders and they sit around and do nothing. So the question is, what do we do? There has to be some level of understanding that churches are going to have problems. Recognize that church do have problems. That doesn't mean we will just accept it. The fact that we say we should recognize that churches do, it doesn't mean that is the way it should be. But at least it will help us. When you want to leave the church because of one disagreement, you remember the other place you are going, you're also going to meet that. And you don't know whether you are going to meet one that is higher than what we have here. So if you are looking for a church that is perfect, you are likely not going to find one. But in case you find one, please do not enter there because they are going to have problems. So one of the fallouts of church problems the greatest fallout of church problem is that sometimes individual Christians will let those problems, those issues, drive them away from the Lord because of what somebody is doing or not doing in the local church. They will make the decision that I'm not going to just separate myself from that person or that issue, but from the Lord. And if you have been a Christian, you must have seen this in many local churches. So many times Christians allow these church problems to drive them away, not just from the local church, but to drive them away from the Lord. When you allow these problems drive you away from the Lord, it shows your lack of understanding of your relationship with God. Let us go to Psalm 106. But before we read that, we are familiar with the story of Moses. Moses did not make it in the promised land. And I believe we can remember why. When God asked him to speak to the rock, he struck the rock because of the way the people approach him concerning their challenges. So we read Psalm 106, verse 32 and 33. I will read. They angered him also at the waters of strife, so that he went in with Moses on the account of them, because they rebelled against his spirit, so that he spoke rashly with his lips. The psalmist says Moses sinned because the people got to him, and he missed out on the promised land. Moses allowed the people to get to him, what the people were doing to get to him, and he missed out on the promised land. I don't want that to be you, and I don't want that to be me. But that can happen in our lives. We can be a part of local church where things aren't perfect, and maybe a part of a local church like that in Corinth, where things are far from perfect, where things are going wrong. Things are not the way they ought to be. And we, like Moses, can let those things get to us to the degree that we end up doing something rash and just saying, I'm giving up on Christianity. To boldly say, well, that church, I have just had enough with them. That preacher, those leaders, they will see. And my plea for everyone is, please, don't let anybody separate you from God. Don't let any group of leaders, don't let any brother or sister anger you, upset you, frustrate you, discourage you to the degree that you will end up missing out on your promised land. Don't let anyone or your reaction to anyone cause you to lose your faith. And when we look at Ephesians chapter 6, verse 13, says, take up the whole armor of God, that you may be able to withstand in the evil day, having done all to stand. That is the purpose of putting on the armor of God. Having done all to stand. You need to do everything in your strength that God has supplied to you to remain faithful and in committed relationship with God. And that includes not letting other people drag you down. Churches are going to have problems, but don't allow those problems remove you from your God. I can remember in our last business meeting, we are told that our church boss, the value now is 38 million. And when I was thinking about that, I said to myself, what of if those brethren that were tasked to get that boss for us were listening to what we were saying, and they allow what we were saying get to them and decided to abandon that project? In which meeting are we going to sit down and be discussing about that 8 million? And who will be in that meeting? So you need to advise yourself, know that when you are working for God, there will be challenges. There will be people that will say one thing or the other, but don't allow them to drag you down. We are running a race, but there are some people that are not running with us. Two of us. So don't allow them to drag you back. You know where you are going. We have good example of those two blind men. Those people were interested in protocol to try to calm them down, to tell them that you need to bring your voice down. But the Bible says they increase the more because the people that are asking them to keep quiet, they have never been blind and they don't know what it is to be blind. So when you are working for the Lord, you make up your mind. Don't pay attention to how people are going to treat you, what people are going to say. And you decide to give up, or they upset you. You decide to give up on Christianity. You decide to give up. The Bible says, this is your father's house, and you must be about your father's business. The other lesson we can learn from the text in this New Testament church is that we must, and that is the point of this episode, we must do all that we can, all that is within us to maintain unity and faithfulness. Let us briefly look at 1 Corinthians 5 and 6. When we come to verse 6, we'll take it in reverse order. We'll go to 6 before we come to 5. As I mentioned earlier, they have the problem of taking each other to court. And you can imagine how the worship will look like. When I have served you paper, you serve me, the next day will come. Who is going to lead the song and who will be singing? Then our brother Paul said, this is the solution. In chapter 6 to 7. Brother goes to law against brother. Brother goes to law against brother, and that before unbelievers. Now, therefore, it is already an utter failure for you that you go to law against one another. Why do you not rather accept wrong? Why do you not rather let yourself be cheated? In some translation, is used defrauded. Now, our mentality, we are not trying to think that way. Some of us, the way we were raised, our parents will warn us, if somebody hits you, make sure you hit him back. If you come back here crying, I will deal with you. In fact, some have changed their own law. They say, if he hit you, make sure you hit him twice. We have people at our side that will say, in encouraging the children, will say, and they mean it. And some of them in our area, some people don't give, some landlords don't give these people house as tenants. Because if you look for their trouble, they are ready to burn down the house. But the challenge is these are people that we have as our members. They come, we don't ask them, are you from Obiekwesu local government? Or Obiabo local government? Sometimes we receive letter, we have Church of Christ, Obiekwesu. What a contradiction. Church of Christ in the heart of Satan. We don't ask them whether they are from Ikora Abase, Ikori Ikoribo, or any of the Ikot over there. Then we accept them as our member, and you say there will be no problem. But what Paul is saying here, the Holy Spirit is saying through Paul is that unity is so important that we might need to suspend the normal rule of justice. Unity is so important that we might need to suspend the normal rule of justice if that is what it takes to maintain unity. You just let yourself be cheated if that is what is going to take to create unity. I tell you, that is a powerful lesson on how unity can be achieved in the family and in the local church. Just accept wrong. Don't call the other person over and hit him back. We have a wonderful experience in that area. Our salvation, our redemption, our reconciliation to the Father is so important that God will allow the normal system of justice to be suspended so that we might be reconciled to God. He let a wrong happen. He let an innocent man be pronounced guilty. More than that, he let his own beloved son be mistreated, abused, and violently put to death by the very people he had created and the very people for whom he was dying for. Because reconciliation to God was that important. Unity is that important as well. Unity by itself is not necessarily commendable. We can agree that all of us can be in 100% agreement, but we are all wrong. That is what we found in chapter 5. They have a fornicator in their midst, and they were in 100% agreement. Nobody was doing anything about that. So you can't say the problem they have there is a unity problem. Whatever makes them to accept that is best known to them. But there is more important thing, which is faithfulness. So we go to verse 5. We go to chapter 5, verse 5. Because of the person that was found in immorality, Paul says, deliver such a one to Satan for the destruction of the flesh, that his spirit may be saved in the day of the Lord. If I understand what he's saying here, he said, enact a kind of punishment, temporary punishment, so that this person's soul will be saved. Withdraw fellowship with him. Don't eat with him. Unity is achieved by caring more for the other person than I do of my own self-interest. Faithfulness is achieved by caring for the will of God more than I do of my own selfish interest. And unity is achieved through discipline. And discipline is not exercise to get my way or to shame somebody. We have two types of discipline. We have the instructive discipline. That is what we did earlier in the morning, and that is what we are doing now. Then the corrective discipline is when the person is being punished, disfellowship, so that he will understand what he's doing is not right and come back to the Lord. It is not done to shame anybody or for somebody to have his way. And if you look at it, that 1 Corinthians, Paul said, send him away. If you go back to 2 Corinthians, Paul said, bring him back. Because he recognized his ways and returned. And that is one of the privileges we have as members of the church, as our brother have highlighted. If we don't have anybody trying to draw us back from error of our ways, then we'll be lost. If you want to be touring all the congregations and nobody knows you, how would they bring you back and know that you are no more faithful in the Lord? The Church of Christ at Osho, they don't know me. And some of our members might even see me out there and they don't know don't know anything about me. So that's one of the benefits we have of being a member of a local church. So that will be directed when we are earning. I don't know of others. For me, Christopher Chibueze, if you find me going astray or in any immorality, please bring me back. First, I ask you do that in love. Then when gentleness and arms around my shoulder first, you have my permission to get rough. You speak Lord, do everything you can to save my soul from hell. That's why I'm your brother. That's why you're my brother. That's why you're my sister. That's what we are supposed to be to each other so that our souls will be saved on the last day. So, brethren, in conclusion, things can get bad at church. If you were in Corinth in the first century, they can get really bad. The unity can be achieved. The key to dealing with those is the first recognize that is the way it is. Churches are going to have problems. Paul didn't write to these churches and tell them, close the door, it's over. You people's problem is too much. Go home, everybody. He said, this is problem number one, problem number two. If you read Paul's letter to them in the 2 Corinthians, you will see Paul said, my hope for you is unshaken. Because this church recognize they have problems. They seek for solution. And they listen. That is characteristics of a good church. Despite the fact we see Corinth as a problem church, Corinth can also be seen as a good church because they recognize they have problems, they seek for solution, and they obey the directions that were given to them. That is the same principle we also need to apply. We are told that this matter was reported to Paul by the house of Flo. So when we observe things that are not going well in the church, our duty is not to gossip about it, to be talking in our private homes, or to be calling each other to discuss about it. We are to deal with it as a church. Since I came to Lagos, I don't know whether I've attended the wedding more than twice, but I know there in the East, we attend weddings regularly. And what most of the ministers will always say, is there anybody in joining this? Is there anybody that have anything that will prevent these two people from being husband and wife? I don't know why they continue to ask that question. Somebody will be around. These people have been planning for their wedding for months. You did not say anything. And you just want to use few seconds to destroy the marriage. But there is this one the man asks. You know, usually when that question is asked, people will be murmuring. But as this man is about to continue with his officiating, he saw a woman coming from the back, heavily pregnant and with a child in her hands. The murmurings increased. So the woman being pregnant and with a child, you can imagine how she will be struggling to come out. So the lady cannot wait any longer. She starts crying when the woman has not even said why she is coming out. So eventually the woman appeared and she was given a mic. And she said, those people at the back, we cannot hear you. Because people are talking at the back, but nobody can hear them. So we said to ourselves, we cannot hear you. When you spend time talking about these things, when there are channels, duty is plain in the Bible on ways to handle issues and to solve them. But when we decide to talk about it on our own, the problem will persist. So let's fix this problem so that we can maintain unity and faithfulness. I urge you, don't leave the Lord over these problems. Maintain your unity, maintain your faithfulness, and individually maintain your faith. May God help us to be the type of people that we ought to be in this local congregation. Bless us with the opportunity to be able to love, fellowship, and to grow together with one another in Jesus Christ's name. Thank you so much, Bro Christopher Chibueze. Brethren, the message was very direct and clear. I'm sure we fixed the lesson from what he has said. However, this is the time we are going to call on